I'm thrilled to be here right now. This is what I planned on doing with the team behind Luck, an animated movie, Skydance Entertainment, Apple TV Plus. We thank our sponsor for bringing it in, but what we really are grateful for is we bring the talent on. Rather than just seeing a clip later tonight, you're going to get to hear from the creators. The sound creators. And we, with apologies, Steve Slanik, supervising editor, sound editor, was not able to be here. But the Devon Kelley, Foley
supervisor.
Foley supervisor. And
general troublemaker.
That is true. I'll take that credit.
And the inimitable Gary Rizzo, Academy Award-winning Gary Rizzo, brings this sort of energy to a track. And we want to talk a bit about animation. Its differences and similarities. But first, we'd just like to give you a feel for what if you haven't seen it yet, could we play the teaser clip?
Hello there. Now, I know what you're thinking. Crikey, a black cat! He's gonna bring me bad luck! Shows what you know about luck. Let's drop some knowledge. Luck is different all around the world, like in Scotland, where a black cat like me is considered very lucky. Remember, kids, don't try this at home. Name's Bob, by the way, and this is the land of luck. Morning, Jerry. We work behind the scenes to create those wee lucky and unlucky moments that make up your everyday life. Like these guys, an entire team thinking up the jammy luck, that kind that makes you feel like $1,000,000. Okay, maybe $100. Of course, then there's the other team, working on the not-so-jammy kind of luck. And they sure love what they do. Well, you humans are a complicated lot. And that's why things run so smoothly here, because no human has ever stepped foot in this place. And with a little bit of luck, they never will.
Where am I?
Oh, you gotta be kidding.
So thank you for joining us, Gary and Devon. I think I want to start out with sort of tone and approach. I mean, it's playful. There's a sort of a fluid choreography in the scenes, and not just dance numbers or music videos. It's in the track. I mean, could you start off, Gary, talking about tone when you get to the mix? I mean, what's an overall goal here?
The way that this movie is set is that in the land of luck, everything is supposed to work out nicely, at least the good look side of things. Everything is supposed to work very, very smoothly, almost, I would say, electric car-like. Everything has to be very slick and appear as though it's choreographed, but actually things are happening by happenstance in perfect setting. And that was kind of the direction that we were given by Peggy Holmes, our director. Make sure that you are communicating it as slick, smooth, but also happenstance. And so, we love direction like that isn't literal direction, turn that up, turn that down. It's a matter of getting that interpretation of the tone.
And just to set it up, we also, fluid and smooth, we go into bad luck world. We're in the real world for a certain point. So tone and approach, do you contrast those? Do you play that up significantly or just subtly?
Well, you're always trying to balance it out so that you're not caught, making these extreme moves. Yeah. But it's something that you have to keep conscious, that our lead character is one of the most unlucky people in the world. And that's kind of the deal, is that she finds her way into the land of luck and wreaks some havoc. So there are moments when the chaos has to kick in, and that's when you break rhythm. And that worked, 9 out of 10 times. When you really want to make the contrast, you break that rhythm. And Peggy, our choreographer director, is all about knowing what that rhythm really is and what to her feels right, and when to break it and how to break it.
And from the Foley point of view, I mean, we have effects, we have an animated film, but Foley has always sort of provided an anchor, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's sort of an approach. So from your point of view with Foley, which you might think like a toaster thing, whatever the sounds are, how do you in Foley approach the two different worlds in terms of articulation or whatever? I mean,
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think it plays off of a lot of what Gary was saying with Foley. Foley, we obviously in a normal setting, you want to cut everything to perfect literal sync a lot of the time. But I think it's creatively, we sort of interpreted sync in a more rhythmic way with the Foley. I mean, of course, it's still in sync as much as it should be, but there's a lot of times where we decided to make the creative choice with both effects and Foley to cut things in a way that was just fun and rhythmic and that played well with the whole scene and that really contributed to the choreography aspect that Gary was talking about, where there's music in the scene as well as effects and Foley, and so we're kind of cutting the Foley in a way that she hits the broom and then the broom hits the door and then the door jams and then the toast flies out of the toaster and hits the wall and slides down, and it's all very rhythmic, and that's how the scene should play. And so we focused more on the way that things play in a choreographed way.
It's interesting to have a certain sort of mechanical sense because we have transportation in the land of luck, which is very fluid and everything. And then we have, the real world where there's footsteps going down a city street and cars are honking and a bus is coming by and they're getting hit over the head. I mean, is it dancing with Foley? I mean, how do you determine what's an effect and what's Foley in animation?
I think in animation, I guess the difference would be a lot of the time that I find Foley kind of anchors animation a lot in the real world and makes things feel like they have texture and weight, because the difference with animation and live action there is that in live action, you have a lot of things like you have Foley in production a lot of the time. And there were actually people on a set in real life walking. There's, things are recorded outdoors. In animation, everything is recorded in a studio. It's all kind of in a vacuum. So you have no production Foley or anything like that. So Foley, I think in animation is even more important in terms of creating this like real world environment that, and, adding footsteps, and adding texture and adding kind of a realness to everything, even though it was technically, all made in a computer, and there was no production Foley or anything like that. And then effects, of course, they really play together, I think. And effects kind of adds that big cherry on top of anything that's, kind of out of this world, exciting.
Bigger than life.
Yeah, larger than life, exactly. So I'd say that's how they played together really well in this film.
And then you pass it off to Gary and it becomes even bigger than
and then it becomes polished and beautiful.
At least a little louder.
Yeah.
Gary, how do you start to think from a mixer's point of view about the interplay of Foley and effects?
Certainly, as Devon mentioned, the Foley is going to convince you that something is real in an animated film. That is going to be the anchor. The effects, certainly when you're in a fantasy animated film like this, can help kind of blow that hyper-real environment bigger than maybe you even imagined that it could. I think that it's the kind of thing where that was a conscious choice when we are in the real world, how big we're going to play some of these effects and how fanciful versus in the good luck world or the bad luck world. I mean, these are all, one of a million choices that we're making to try and sell and convince the environment or the intensity of any given scene.
And it has to be fluid as you move in between it. She goes through let's talk about a scene or two, going down an elevator, from good luck to bad luck. I love that scene.
Right. It's a big drop.
A big drop.
Yeah.
Or her first entrance into the portal to good luck. How do you, what's your involvement in something like that, which are traditional sound design scenes? Are you involved?
Yeah. So I can sort of speak to both, Pete Horner was our sound designer, so we're speaking a bit on behalf of some of the amazing work that he's done. I definitely want to credit him for everything that he's put into this. And Josh Gold, who also was a sound designer early on in the movie. They both did fantastic work. But I think I think it goes both for effects and Foley. It's sort of a change in tone when Sam enters from the human world into the land of luck, like we kind of saw in that teaser there. It's like everything is running so perfectly and smoothly and with total finesse and almost as though it's perfectly choreographed in this land of luck. And then Sam is kind of this lovable, clumsy,
Yeah.
human, very human, very kind of a bad luck in some ways character. And she kind of crash lands into this world. And I'd say effects and Foley wise, we really wanted to emphasize that contrast with her in those moments, which was sort of like we wanted to have a bunch of debris flying around Foley wise, and effects wise, we definitely played up that difference between the two worlds there.
Right. And as much as the Foley really anchored the reality of it, you can almost embellish it further through effects in that you can make some of the disruptions that Sam brings to the good luck world that much more, accessible.
Yeah.
Because you can overplay them a little bit. Whereas if you overplay Foley, then, you've busted the illusion.
Exactly.
I love one of the scenes, and I would love for you to walk me through it. I mean, in the early time, when she's in her kitchen, it's Sam's first opportunity to be on her own. And there's almost the toast and the comedic element there that's going on. And it shows her world being blown up. Can you, what does that scene involve? I mean, you'll see some of it tonight, but...
Yeah, as far as Foley and effects go, that was one of the first scenes we worked on.
It's a great scene.
And it was, I kind of fell in love with the movie in that scene. I thought it was just so, it really made Sam a more lovable character. And I think as far as Foley and effects go, we actually both cut almost everything in that scene. Yeah, so Foley covered almost everything and so did effects. And we sort of made decisions. Some things would play together. Some things we'd say, oh, the effects play better for that. Like the toaster was a really big thing. We had like 8 renditions of the toast, I
love the toaster.
Yeah, just the right pop for the toaster that wasn't behaving. So for that scene, we both, because it really kind of is one of those scenes where, yes, everything is anchored in the real world as far as it should all be covered by Foley because it's, literal items that she's playing with. It's a lot of Foley props and whatnot. But because it's to emphasize the way things play in a cinematic way, effects can also bring a lot to that by adding, tons of different alts for things and like a more interesting toast squeak as it squeals down the wall with the jam. So that's a really good example, I think, of how effects and Foley really play off of each other to both anchor those items as in the real world and embellish on them to make them even funnier.
What do you do, Gary? I mean, it's that squeak, the jam, flopping down. Those things are comedy.
Well, it is comedy, and you kind of want to make sure that the scene plays almost like a Fred Astaire dance sequence.
Yes.
That's a good one.
You really want to make sure that it is funny, that it is entertaining, but it also has this chaotic choreography to it to make sure that that it has this flow, that it feels right. Really, I mean, it's hard to talk about mixing these kinds of things because they're such gut instincts that you have in the moment when you have these materials in front of you. And that's why I love mixing, is that you're going to sit there and the materials that you have and you have to feel it, and you're not really ready to turn it over until... I'm not ready to turn it over until I feel that it's right. Yeah. It's not always the working case with the workflow. Sometimes we got people sitting with us, but you really want to put that, your best foot forward, and you don't know when it's there until you just feel it in your heart that that it's working for you.
Well, it's funny that scene you mentioned, that there's another scene where she's in her apartment and the bed's going up, the blower's going by, things are falling apart, and you mentioned Fred Astaire, it's like Lucille Ball meets Ginger Rogers or something.
Yeah.
I mean, in a sense, that there is this choreography. When you brought up the word choreography, do you think in those terms? Do you think in rhythm and melody? And
totally.
Like that?
Totally, especially when we have a director that's a choreographer. I mean, Peggy was making sure that those terms were, common direction, commonly used words, at the mix. But, rhythm is always important. Whether you want it to be slow, whether you want it to be fast, whether you're on a Chris Nolan film or whether you're on an animated Apple Plus film, like every film is going to have its own unique rhythm. So I think that's kind of underneath it all, always.
I do think rhythm and tone are sort of underused words almost, because I think those have to be established early. I would think. The sort of the tone of the
It's
film.
your color palette, basically, if you were talking to the DPs, you know?
Yeah.
That it's not all, just so you know, this film is not all a 18-year-old girl dancing around her apartment. There are explosions, there are randomizers, there are all kinds of fun
design.
things. So
yeah.
I think we have a clip, if we could show somewhere here. We're to get to the randomizer the big randomizer explosion here in a minute. So I'm not sure if that's
Sounds
what we're
exciting.
seeing, but
That'll be fun.
let's see what we got.
It's coming from the in-between. There must be something wrong. I didn't think that was possible.
Oh no. Hazel!
We're going between good and bad luck, and these are big effect scenes. I mean, Gary, you've done Batman, Dark Knight. You've done these things. And,
Confirmed.
And we have a moment where, quite beyond anybody's control, the world might fall apart. Can you set us up for this big, the randomizer, big explosion? In terms of elements, I should say.
Well, I mean, maybe we should back up just a second because we do have the whole point is that this explosion is a buildup of the bad luck crystals that explode, and all of a sudden the world of luck is in peril. But we have good luck crystals and we have bad luck crystals, and we have a contrast between these two. Of course, we're trying to create tone. We're back to tone. What is good luck? What does good luck sound like versus bad luck? Like, as a concept, that's hard.
Very hard.
You know, so, and this is where I would reference the notes that he gave us. I'm no sound designer, you know, up is louder for me. But I will say Pete and Josh worked really, really hard to get this stuff through, and I want to represent them as well as possible.
It's a
Feel free
wonderful
to
scene.
jump in.
Yeah, anytime.
In general, these good luck crystals, the source of these crystals, I thought was funny because when I initially heard them, I thought it was like very rain stick oriented.
Yeah.
It turns out he had used it was a Christmas themed dog collar that had all these micro bells around it that he recorded at 100K sample rate so that he could pitch manipulate it without getting any artifacts and all that. And it is this very rain stick like, but unique, of course.
Yeah.
That's why we go through the process of design.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and opposite to that, the bad luck crystals were these magnets. They were these almost like pill-shaped magnets that they weren't flat. So because when you put two magnets together and they're flat, they just go click.
Yeah.
These had a bit more of a rhythm and a texture to them.
Yeah.
So then now we have that contrast. Now let's take some of those elements, and now I know that there's a lot of sound particles utilization through this.
I do. I know that Pete specifically did a lot of design work on the good luck and bad luck crystals and the explosion. And I think, as you were saying, it was hard because the bad luck crystals are supposed to sound sort of like they stick together and they have a different essence than the good luck crystals,
Right,
which are
more
almost
viscous
Yeah,
almost, and they
yeah.
clog the machine, and then
Yeah.
complicated. I mean, these are, I think, complicated things to create from
Yeah,
a design level.
very
So, I mean,
complicated.
hats off to our crew that
They
is
were
not here.
incredible.
today.
I know. They're so wonderful.
I mean, I love that there's sort of some great high-end sparkle in these that come around.
Yeah.
And even when we get in the middle of, one thing I was impressed with, in the middle, even out of my very nice sound bar at home,
Sonos? Just
no,
curious.
No, it was built. It's actually a 10 speaker prototype built by the former engineers of the Grateful Dead. It's unbelievable.
Oh.
But,
Wow.
It sounds
Let's
great. But
talk.
you have all that low end, and you have all this stuff, and but yet you have this definition on the high end that is every bit as big as something you would see in a Terminator movie or something like that. It feels like at times. So, can you talk about working with those frequencies in a way when you get to a big scene in animation?
Well, the nice thing is that the spectrum is there for us to play with. I mean, on top of all that, we've got John Debney's score, which I have to say, I love the score to this movie.
Yeah.
It's so good. Debney is so...
There's a lot of music in it.
There is a lot of
There's
music.
a lot of music in it.
But he's really good with these themes and playing Sam's theme and playing Bob's theme. And the music itself is wonderful. I'll encourage you all to give it a listen.
Yes.
But at the same time, these decisions of frequency range and where things are going to land, they're changing moment to moment at any given time. Like when we do have those crystals and that super high end, you're not necessarily going to lean into flutes and cymbals and things like that in the music. You're constantly evaluating these things almost on a shot by shot basis to know what works and what doesn't work, what's a conflict and what isn't a conflict, but also emotionally, like, what do I need out of this scene in this moment? What really is the most effective element? And it very well could be a sound effect that you need, or it could be music. The one of a billion decisions that we make every day. Yeah, I know I keep going back to this, but it's why these panels are so hard. It's like, how do you mix the shot? It's like, well, you
Keep trying stuff.
Well, yeah, you do. You really do. It is a lot of experimentation, and sometimes, we are going to go strong with the music, and we say, yeah, but now we're losing a lot of the texture. Okay, well, maybe it's just the drums that we need to pull back so that we can, fill in the low end from the sound effects. Whether it's the rumble or the explosion or the buys or whatever it is. At any given moment, you're analyzing that, and it equals up to a billion decisions at the end of the day, which is why I get tired at the end of the day.
You wouldn't know it.
Yeah. And one of the things, there's so many elements that go into this type of movie. We have the big scenes and such, but I also really enjoyed, it sounds cliche, but I enjoyed the characters and the sort of differentiate. From Sam herself to the dragon, the CEO who's Jane Fonda, right?
Yeah.
There's certain elegance and fluidity through a dragon. And then you have Bob the cat, our comic relief. Can you tell me about his footsteps first?
Sure. They're adorable, first of all, as is he.
Yeah.
You gotta go light when it comes to a cat.
Yes,
You gotta go really light.
Really cute, really light. One of the, Bob specifically, but this kind of goes for all of the little creatures in the Land of Luck. So other than...
leprechauns.
Yeah, the leprechauns. We have Bob, we have the leprechauns, we have the little pigs. The idea of all of the creatures in the Land of Luck was that they were kind of petite and cute and didn't take up too much space, and other than the dragon, who is very large. But it was kind of a contrast that Bob's footsteps needed to be very small and cute. And I know I was down in Foley a lot when they were recording them, and it was fun to see. They had, it was like little gloves and fingers to do like the pitter pat of his little paws, but that was definitely a focus with him and just building up his character and just the size difference of the little characters in the Land of Luck to emphasize kind of the difference between big clunky Sam, the human pretending to be a leprechaun, and then the big presence of Jane Fonda, her character, the dragon, Babe.
And when they first come together, there's this sort of meeting and everything. Gary, do you think in terms of character, or you just sound? I mean, how?
No, always character. You're always, you want to think as close as your director thinks as possible.
Yeah.
You really want to try to figure out your director. And that's, I think, another super fun part about mixing is that you want to try and get into that director's headspace to figure out the language, the tone, how they are perceiving the movie in their head, so that you can find the knee-jerk reactions through them. It's a weird thing, I know, but like that's part of the fun challenge for me. But yeah, I'm always thinking about character. You're always thinking about environment. You're always thinking about tone. You're thinking about space. I mean, one of the aspects that I really do love about mixing for animated films is you are creating these environments, not just through backgrounds and not just through sound effects texture, but also in acoustical space. Like, I'm a huge fan of Terry Porter. I'm just going to shout that out there. Like, he is my hero. He is my inspiration because he really, I believe, in those early 80s movies, the Disney animated films, like he was the one that really brought texture to these acoustical environments.
Yeah.
And has been an inspiration ever since.
The third film I wrote about in 1991 or 2 was Beauty and the Beast. The second sort of return to the Disney animation. It was brilliant. Mark Mangini and Terry Porter.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And that article really was a huge inspiration for
come
me.
on.
No, I'm
No,
not
you're
kidding
making
you. I
that up.
still have it. I still have my issue of that magazine. I assure you, I'm not blowing this up. It's and that really has been the source of inspiration for, and I've done a lot of animated films, but like that concept of perspective in animated films, which previous to those Terry Porter films really wasn't done. You know,
There were slide whistles and goofs.
well, yeah, and the dialogue track was up, and if you got reverb, it was a treat. If you actually go back, I just worked on the new Pinocchio for Disney Plus, but if you go back and look at the old Pinocchio, there's this whole underwater sequence, and everybody's voices the whole time, and you're like, we would never do that right now. They just kind of like
Thank God.
they put the vibrato treatment on, and they're like, sounds good. So, but like, and I'm totally, I hope I'm not dissing that sound crew from way back when, but the fact of the matter is, such consideration, detail is put into these acoustical spaces to live and coexist with the backgrounds and the sound effects and these ambiances to make it that much more convincing. And it's a huge part of what we're doing.
Including, there's so much that goes into it. And tonight, for those of you who stay tonight, there is a wonderful scene near the beginning there's a chase through a city street. And
Yeah.
it is just, it's absolutely, talk about choreography and the pace and the action. And I know you're not going to be able to stick around to sort of introduce that clip. So to sign off here, we all love
Are we out of time? Tom?
we all love a good chase scene. Could you walk us through that? Because we got to say a chase scene that will end with our hero going into the portal. So what have you taken away? What's Foley in this? Bob's involved. Sam's involved. And start it off, Devon.
Oh my gosh, this scene is one of the best examples, I think, of the rhythm and choreography aspects of this movie, and I'm sure you will agree.
I agree. I concur.
It is such a fun chase scene. The Foley for it, again, was super rhythmical. I mean, there's all these moments that happen, like, with Sam getting interrupted by bikes that fly past her, and then she runs into a pedestrian, and then Bob is running away from her, and he's hopping from like umbrella to umbrella as the umbrellas
He's almost
rhythmically
he's
open
almost
in
taunting
time.
her.
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely. He's totally
taunting her, and it's kind of like this cat and mouse game, but it's all timed out perfectly to the music that's happening in that scene. Yeah, so that was, I would say, the Foley in that scene. That was like, music and rhythm was God in that scene to us. It was a really fun scene to cut, because it's not every day that you get to cut Foley and be like, oh, well, maybe this isn't like perfectly in sync, but it shouldn't be, because it's supposed to be. It plays better when it's rhythmic, and I'm sure Gary can speak
the
to that
umbrellas
too.
in particular.
I love that.
And the trees going down.
Yeah, the trees bending, and even at the end when the music stops, that rolling dumpster becomes an element of the music. And that's a combination of effects and Foley as well. But it becomes, the score of that moment.
We have
It's
an
a
elegant
wonderful
scene,
moment.
that ends with a rolling dumpster in an alley. It's kind of fun.
It's better than it sounds, I promise.
Right? Yeah, it's true. We're not showing that clip now. That's showing tonight. Is that the deal?
That's the 8-minute clip. Is part
see.
of that.
Oh, okay.
Certainly tonight we get the chase scene in full, and I got a kick out of it. I got to say, because it does have all of the elements of a chase scene that you might have with Laurel and Hardy at a certain point, or you might have in a real. Not saying action thriller, but in a real movie.
Yeah.
In a live action movie.
Yeah, and there's a little nod to Looney Tune in
Yes.
there,
Oh,
a
yeah.
little
Yeah.
bit, but that's joy. That's
all the-
good stuff.
Oh,
you
yeah.
want, tap into something, tap into the best. Get
Get
that.
a boing. Or anything in that.
A little bit. At the same time, it's the most innocent chase scene you'll ever see, too.
Yes.
A girl chasing a cat,
She's chasing the cat and runs into a tree and hits a bus. I mean, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. We are at 12:30. Lunch is going to begin shortly. I can't thank you enough. Coming down, this is a team that works often up at Skywalker Sound and up north, and I'm happy to bring some of my Bay Area compatriots down to this LA event. So, Devon, thank you.
Thank
Gary,
you so much.
Thank you,
thank
Tom.
you. And
You're the best.
Apple
Thank you
TV
guys for
Plus.
coming.
Thanks, everybody.
Apple TV Plus, thank you.